During this pandemic, where you, like everyone else, should be at home, here is something you can do while at self-isolation. Read some books. It doesn't require any internet connection and can really be very rewarding. Today, I'll be gushing over my favorite author, the great late Sir Terry Pratchett. If I had to explain most of his writing, I would say it's fantasy for grown-ups. Most of the stories are based on the flat earth called Discworld, which is carried by 4 elephants. What are those 4 elephants standing on? I hear you ask. Well, duh! They're standing on the great Atun, a giant great turtle. And no, we do not know the sex of great Atun yet. I do hear that Rincewood is soon to lure some scientists over the edge to determine the sex though. In this world, there is magic, wizards and witches. There are gods, trolls, gnomes, and all other fairy creatures. Then there are large civilizations where they either cook vindaloo or has a great big wall to stop the demons from outside invading the land. In fact, Unseen University has recently made this machine that can think, but only works when the guys leave some cheese behind. Just in case you didn't get that reference, it's the first Discworld computer and it only works when a mouse is near it and you need the cheese to get the mouse. Overall, as a grown-up, you'd find many parallels between Discworld and our round earth. That's a slight dig at the flat earthers. The first time I got introduced to Terry Pratchett was back in year 1999. I was living in London and had to go to the hospital for a checkup. On my way, I passed by a second-hand bookshop and decided to pick this book up to read while I was waiting for my checkup. This book had a very interesting synopsis. It was about gods and how they get their power from believers. The more believer a god has, the more powerful she becomes. And when there is no believers left, the god dies. Honestly, I could not put the book down. I finished it and went back to that bookstore the very next day and bought every single other Terry Pratchett books they had. By the way, if you're interested, that first book I read, it was called Small Gods. The trouble with being a god is that you have got no one to pray to. Wonderful. There are so many great characters that I'm having a really hard time to choose one. I love every single one of them. One of the first characters you come across is Rincewood. He is the worst wizard in Discworld. In fact, he's so bad, he spells wizard with 2 Z's, often described by scholars as the magical equivalent to the number 0, and spends just about all his time running away from various bands of people who want to kill him for various reasons. That being said, a lot later down the series, you find out the scary truth behind why he's so bad and the fact that he might just be the most dangerous person on Discworld. Next is my most favorite. We're talking about the greatest witch of all time, Esmerelda Weatherwax, better known as Granny Weatherwax. He is officially the crone, although she has difficulty matching the classic old hag appearance. She still has perfect skin, not a single wart, and all her teeth. She is reckoned to be more powerful than the most well-known witch on the Discworld, Black Alice, who was pushed into her own oven by some naughty kids. Granny uses a form of magic called ideology. In modern times, I would call it mentalism. She was the original mentalist, And as one mentalist to another, my hat's off to her. No wonder I love her so much. Then we have Captain Carrot Ironfoundersson. Raised by dwarves, he is the rightful king of Ankh-Morpork, but rather be a policeman, standing at 6 foot 6 inches, bulging with muscle. Carrot is the most honest, good-natured character in entire Discworld. Though he might appear simple, over the course of times, we do see him in some interactions and we ask ourselves, is he really simple or seriously devious? Next is Sir Samuel Vimes. In my opinion, this is the most fleshed out character of all. The first time we come across him is in the novel Guards. At that time, he was a drunk police captain who's neutered by the rich and powerful. Over the novels, we saw his inner self, the sheer raw black and white view of world. Hell, this is a guy who'd arrest the gods for not doing a good enough job. He's the most cynical policeman ever. Final character I would like to talk about is not a person, but an anthropomorphic personification. We're talking about Death. I hope that did sound like all capital. His steed is a great pale horse called Binky. The idea here is, us humans give all anthropomorphic personifications form, and thus Death is a skeleton carrying a seed. His task is not to kill, but to collect. Lord, what can the harvest hope for, if not for the care of the Reaper Man?
Honestly, this Discworld is a fascinating place, with many more colorful characters. Each novel is a story on its own. You don't need to have any prior knowledge of what has happened, but if you do know the canon, it becomes a lot more fun. Please do yourself a favor. Get a paperback or digital version of any of the novels and start reading. You'll be introduced to the greatest city on Discworld, the great Ankh-Morpork. You will visit many fascinating places like Ramtops. Now that's the most magical place in Discworld and has a huge ancestry of great witches and wizards. Followed by the Rincewood. The farther you go, then you get to see the edge, the curve of the world. Let's not forget, this whole Discworld is still sitting on 4 giant turtles, and that itself is carried by the great Atun. There isn't enough praise I can lavish on Terry Pratchett's writing. One of my deepest regrets would always be that I never got to meet him, and when he passed away, I cried. With that being said, talking about his work always brings up a smile in my face. It's very hard to pick a top 10 list, but I did try. And on screen, you will see some of my recommendations. Happy reading! And once again, thank you, Sir Terry Pratchett. Us agnostics are at a limbo when it comes to people who have passed away. But as you have mentioned in one of your books, do you not know that a man is not dead while his name is still spoken? We remember you, Sir Terry Pratchett, and thanks for being there.